Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kendra and this video is going to be a stash and tell of all of my sweater quantities and one vest quantity. If you're not familiar with the term sweater quantity, it simply refers to a sufficient amount of yarn to knit a sweater. I'm going to be sharing the sweater quantities, how much yarn I have, and what pattern I intend to knit with it. So the sweater quantities I'm sharing, I'm going to be going in chronological order of acquisition. So we're going to go from the oldest yarn to the newest yarn, essentially, and there's going to be a bonus project at the end. The first sweater quantity that I have in my stash is 7 skeins of H&W Forge in the color Honey. So I purchased this during Rhinebeck weekend of 2022. I got 7 skeins, and this was one of the several Rhinebeck exclusive colorways that they developed to sell at Indie Untangled. So they weren't vending at the actual New York Sheep and Wool Festival, but they were vending at Indie Untangled. So yeah, that will always be a really special experience for me. But yes, it was a Rhinebeck exclusive colorway, and I knew going in that I wanted to buy a sweater quantity of this specific color. It's so squishy and plump, and I think it is going to have some incredible stitch definition, and I'm really excited to work with this. And I'm kicking myself that it has taken me so long to get around to using it, because at this point this yarn is going on 2 years old, and I have acquired and worked through many sweater quantities since acquiring this, and it's kind of embarrassing at this point that I haven't used it. The project I plan to make with it is the Calderon sweater by Jared Flood. It is a fairly oversized but cropped cardigan knit bottom up with some lovely texture. I really like the silhouette of this sweater, a fairly oversized body and generously fitting sleeves. And I also am intrigued by the 3/4 length sleeves. I don't currently own any garments that have 3/4 length sleeves, so I'm interested in trying that out. I believe it's knit bottom up. I love all of the texture, and I think this yarn in particular is going to really let that texture shine. And yeah, this has been on my list for a very long time. I did not have a project in mind when I purchased this yarn, and I cycled through a number of potential options for what I would use it for. But once I landed on the Calderon cardigan, I haven't wavered since. And this pattern has been in my queue since November of 2023. So I'm pretty committed to this project plan, and I have no real excuse for why I haven't gotten around to it, except for the fact that there have been new and shiny projects that have caught my attention. But every time I think about this pattern with this yarn, I am very excited about the idea of making it. I just have to get my life together and actually do the thing. I have 9 skeins of H&W Weld, which is their fingering weight base, in the color Mallard. So Mallard was not an exclusive colorway to Rhinebeck weekend, but it was a new colorway that they released shortly before Rhinebeck weekend. So I was still excited to see this in person and get my hands on it, and I bought 9 skeins with a project plan. So initially my project plan was to knit a Citrine Light pullover by Emily Green. I am currently in the final stages of the Citrine pattern, the original worsted weight version of that pattern. And I don't want to say I'm tired of the pattern, but I kind of feel like I don't necessarily want to use this yarn for it. That could change but I'm fairly committed to the project that I have picked out for this yarn, and that is the box pullover, also by Jared Flood. There's nothing super special about this pattern in particular in terms of the construction and the silhouette, but it has this like modular where you can pick different elements. So how you want the neckline, how you want the sleeves to fit, how you want the hem to be. And they have a few, Brooklyn Tweed has a few patterns that kind of follow this same template. I know the Modern Tabard is one of them that I recall hearing about, but this is another one. And normally I don't really put a lot of stock in a pattern having a different variations written into it. And my opinion, that just runs the risk of more mistakes in the pattern and more opportunities to get turned around with the pattern instructions and all those things. I like the simpler patterns. In a lot of ways, less is more. So who's to say? I may have a blast knitting it up. Yeah, I just wasn't in the mood to knit anything super intricate. And this is a really rich color. And so that makes me want to stay on the simple side in terms of texture and pattern. I'm not as committed to this project plan as I am with the previous project I talked about. So it could change, but I would say I am 85% certain that this is the pattern I'm going to use this yarn to make. Two years these have been in my stash. I really just need to. The next yarn I have to share was purchased on a whim, and it's also not technically a sweater quantity, but instead a vest quantity. And that is exactly what I intend to make with it. So the yarn is this Patons Grace, which is 100% mercerized cotton yarn, and the color Night, which is a jet black color. So nothing super special about this yarn. I have a Michael's 5 minutes from my house, if that, maybe 3 minutes. So whenever I'm in that vicinity, I pop into Michael's to see what they have. And I don't know if this is true for Michael's across the board, but the Michael's by my house is horrible in terms of the yarn selection. Every once in a blue moon, I will stumble upon something that I actually want. I would say it's hit or miss, but it's mostly miss. Except in this case, this was absolutely an impulse purchase. I'm going to be using it to make the Sea Breeze sweater the Sea Breeze sweater vest by Park Williams, also known as Park and Knit on Instagram. Ever since I saw this pattern, I really wanted to make it in a neutral color. So it was either going to be a cream or a black, and the black is what I ended up going with out of convenience, really. Pretty basic in terms of the shape. It has an all over mesh lace pattern on the main body, and I think it is trimmed in 1x1 rib, and I think it'll pair really nicely with my white and blue linen pants, my white jeans, and my blue jeans that I have. So there are a number of pieces already in my wardrobe that I know I'll be able to wear this with. So I'm excited to work this up, but it probably won't be until next summer. Next up, I have some yarn that I purchased when I went to Iceland back in June for a knitting retreat. And the yarn I purchased was this Istex Lettlopi in the color 0052. I don't know if they name their colors with words. And before you say anything, I know this is a yarn that I can easily get my hands on in the United States. Okay, I know exactly where I can purchase this very yarn. You do not have to tell me that. I know I didn't have to go all the way to Iceland to get this, but it is Icelandic yarn, and you know what they say about when in Rome. So I got this, and I'm glad I did, even though this is not necessarily special in the sense that I could only get it in Iceland. If anything, I'm really glad I have easy access to this where I am now, just because what if I run out of yarn for the project I plan to make? A number of reasons, but yeah, it was cheaper in Iceland, and I just wanted it to be part of my experience. And now when I work with this and I look at my finished object, I am always going to be reminded of the blast I had in Iceland in 2024. So no regrets there. I also bought some other yarn that is not accessible in the United States, so I didn't just go all the way to Iceland to buy stuff that I could buy here. There's other stuff mixed in that I haven't mentioned, but this is the sweater quantity that I purchased when I was there. And with this yarn, I intend to make the Olsen cardigan by Julie Hoover. This is an interesting cardigan. I have not knit anything quite like this before. It has a shawl collar, which I've never knit before. It has I think it's a dolman sleeve silhouette, which I've never knit before. It is seamed, knit bottom up and seamed, and the sleeves are knit as a part of the body. So you just do increases to shape the underarm. There's a lot of excess fabric under the arm. I'm not 100% sure if that's a silhouette that I'm going to love, but the pictures that I've seen, I do really like. And I think this yarn would be great for a big cozy layering piece, which is exactly what this cardigan is. I think this is a really good yarn for that project. I really like this yarn. It has some heathering to it. It's like kind of brown, kind of gray, kind of black. Really like this yarn, and I'm excited for this project. And the last sweater quantity I have to share is some Vintage DK by Berroco. It is a 52% acrylic, 40% wool, and 8% nylon yarn. And I have it in the color cast iron. I purchased this past summer, maybe a month or two ago. I went to Wool & Company with a couple friends, and the hilarious thing is that the person who'd never been there before, and pretty much the reason we went, didn't even buy yarn. Hi, Halima. I bought yarn. I'm the only one who bought yarn, but I mean, you know, it's my burden and I bear it. So while I was there, I was on the hunt for some yarn to make a sweater for my husband, which is... There's a story there. I've talked about it before. I've attempted to knit my sweater a husband. I always do that. I always do that. I've attempted to knit my husband a sweater before without much success. I won't go into the details, but I'm finally emotionally in a place where I can try again without crying when I think about it. With this yarn, I'm going to be knitting the Phantomus sweater by Wally One Knitting. It is a very simple sweater. It has a zipper at the neckline, which is something I'm a little nervous about trying, to be honest. But what I like about this yarn is that it is machine washable. It's mostly acrylic. So I think it's just going to hold up to life a bit better, and he won't have to be precious about washing it. I figured it was a much safer bet than giving him something that could potentially felt. So that is the main reason I went for this yarn. The color is also great. He loves black. It's his favorite color. I feel like he doesn't wear any other color. So it is knit bottom up, and I believe it's a saddle shoulder. It should be an interesting project, and I will be documenting it on my channel. This is going to be the next project that I cast on once I wrap up my current sweater and a couple accessory knits. So stay tuned to see how this turns out. And the last sweater quantity is not actually a sweater quantity. I have to make it into a sweater quantity. And no, I'm not talking about spinning, which seems to be all the rage. I am not a spinner, but I am a frogger. This is a new item on my resume. Frogging things, ripping them out. I am the hand of destruction. I plan to rip out my Savin sweater. Yeah. An epic project in so many ways, including failure. I talked about this sweater multiple times on my channel. I did a dedicated project vlog that I'll link below, and I also talked pretty extensively about it in the video where I ranked all of my hand knit pullovers, and this was the last pullover in the ranking. And after making that video, it dawned on me that I needed to figure out what I wanted to do next, either getting rid of it or fixing it or ripping it out and making something completely different. And I finally committed to ripping it out and making something completely different. It took me a long time to get to this point, but I think part of my mental block was that I was just so disappointed that it didn't work the way I wanted it to. It was my first cabled sweater. I had a lot of feelings about this project. It took me a lot of time to process that and accept that in its current state, it is not going to work for my wardrobe. I admitted that to myself, but it took a bit more time for me to decide what I wanted to do. Eventually, I decided that ripping it out and making something new with it was what I wanted to do. But it took me even more time to decide, okay, what pattern am I going to make? For some reason, making decisions around this Sovereign sweater has been a real mental block for me. I finally committed to somewhat of a plan. By the way, the yarn is the Pearl Soho Worsted Twist, which is, I think, 100% merino 2-ply yarn, and whatever their cream color is. I don't know if they still make it. I made this back in 2021, I think. So yeah, I don't know. That's the yarn information. But I am torn between two project plans for this frogged yarn. And I think I'm finally at the point where I'm really excited about the potential project that I want to make. Now my dilemma is picking one. I had a light bulb moment and I thought I could knit a Christmas sweater with this yarn. Stockinette with a flare. So I was browsing lace weight yarns on Wool & Company's website, and I knew I didn't want to do mohair. I was pretty certain I didn't want to do suri. The fuzzy knits are just not my thing, but I was curious to see what else they had, and I stumbled upon this sequins lace weight yarn with a metallic thread. How cool would it be to knit a simple stockinette sweater, but hold the yarn double with something that gives it a little bit of sparkle, something subtle, but still fun and festive. So I've decided whatever I make in terms of the pattern, I'm going to be using this yarn held double with a sequins yarn. I need your help choosing which pattern to make and which color sequins to use. So the first pattern option is the Yoga Winter Sweater by Naringa Rook. This was the first sweater I picked and fell in love with, and that is kind of what prompted the light bulb moment. And it is a simple top-down raglan piece with 2x2 trim. The statement here is the split hem and that tapered shaping at the bottom of the sweater. And I thought that shape would look really nice with maybe a pencil skirt or some skinny jeans or even a dress, or I think it'll look really nice with a lot of the bottoms that I have in my wardrobe, especially anything high-waisted and relatively fitted. And the other sweater I'm considering making is the Un sweater by Anne Fiskum Sunde. Very similar in terms of the main details. It's another oversized raglan with 2x2 rib trim. The key difference is the collar, which would be easy to customize between the two. And of course, the hem. So there's a high split hem on this pattern as well, but it just goes straight down in 2x2 rib instead of the taper shaping. And for the life of me, I cannot decide which direction I want to go with this project. Which pattern to choose? Please help. So if you think one option would be better than the other, let me know in the comments what your choice would be and why. Because it is truly a tie in my mind, and I have a couple of months before I'm even in a position to cast this on. So that means I have a couple of months to agonize and overthink and overanalyze, you know, girl things. I think I like them both equally, and I would be equally happy no matter which that I choose. I could do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And ironically enough, that is what's making it so difficult to choose. So I probably might, I might pick whichever one is cheaper. I might just knit a swatch and pick whichever one I meet the gauge for, assuming I meet gauge for one of them. So yeah, I'm leaning on you guys to help me break the tie. And if that doesn't help, I will probably burn it. So the other thing I'm not completely certain about is what color in the sequins yarn that I want to use for this project. They have a goldish color, goldish champagne color, a silver color, a color with like rainbow sequins. So yeah, I'm not entirely certain on the sequins yarn. And by the way, I cannot take credit for this. Phylecia of Phylecia here on YouTube. I really like her videos. She knits some really unique projects. I think it was last holiday season, she was knitting a sequin sweater in this beautiful ruby red color, and I gawked. I was so into that idea. I give all the credit to her for me even thinking of holding a sequins yarn in a project. But yeah, that's where the idea came from. Feel free to check her channel out. Thank you in advance for helping me out in the comments, because I am incredibly indecisive and I need help. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.